Here's the brutal truth that Nintendo fans don't want to hear. Sometimes following up a masterpiece is worse than never trying at all. My journey through Tears of the Kingdom, a Switch 2 redemption story. Let me be completely transparent with you. I had serious doubts about Tears of the Kingdom long before it hit the shelves. Breath of the Wild wasn't just another game release. It was a cultural phenomenon that single-handedly rescued Nintendo from the Wii U disaster and launched them into Switch stardom. For me personally, that game marked the end of an era, my final year of high school, with university looming that September. It felt like my beloved Zelda series was saying goodbye to my childhood while simultaneously growing up itself. Trading linear dungeons for open-world freedom that somehow managed to outshine every competitor in the sandbox genre. So naturally, the question haunted me. How do you possibly top perfection? Despite my reservations, I still pre-ordered the game in May 2023, like the devoted fan I am. Initially, everything seemed promising. I conquered the first dungeon, mapped out significant portions of Hyrule, and genuinely enjoyed every moment. But then something unexpected happened. I simply quit. Why would someone abandon a game they were clearly loving? Was it because I felt overwhelmed by the sheer scope? Was I being too picky about the original Switch's aging hardware? Secretly hoping for that mythical Switch Pro everyone kept whispering about? Or perhaps the reality was simpler and more depressing. I had become an adult with a demanding full-time job, struggling to balance gaming with the chaotic puzzle that is adult life. When Nintendo finally unveiled the Switch 2, alongside enhanced versions of recent Zelda titles, and my schedule became more forgiving, I realized I had no more excuses. It was time to dive back into this adventure properly. And here's the plot twist most people miss. I'm incredibly grateful I waited. The technical revolution comes with a controversial price tag. Let's address the elephant in the room first. The visual and performance improvements are absolutely spectacular. But Nintendo's pricing strategy might leave you questioning their motives. The game now runs on hardware that makes the original Switch's 2015 Tegra chip look like ancient technology. Both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom harness the Switch 2's superior specifications to deliver visuals that finally look respectable on modern 4K displays. Every texture has been completely overhauled with premium quality assets. Distant landscapes render with crisp detail that makes the world feel genuinely tangible. And everything runs at a buttery smooth 60 FPS. And I mean truly smooth, not the stuttering mess we sometimes got before. Remember how the Korok Forest used to bring the original Switch to its knees? That's ancient history now. The resolution improvements are equally impressive. 1080p in handheld mode and 1440p upscale to 4K when docked. Both dynamically adjusting based on system demands. It's a massive upgrade from the muddy 900p we endured before. But here's where it gets controversial. Nintendo chose AMD's FSR 1.0 for upscaling instead of the Switch 2's built-in NVIDIA DLSS technology, which they've already proven works beautifully in the system's Cyberpunk port. The result isn't as sharp as it could be, and I'll say something that might sound like blasphemy. I actually wish they had included an optional 30 FPS quality mode targeting native 4K resolution. Now, for the part that's really going to spark debate. Nintendo is charging £7.99 for these enhancements, or requiring an active online expansion pass subscription. This is particularly frustrating because they've enhanced other Switch 1 games at no additional cost. Is it worth the money? That depends entirely on your perspective. But personally, I would have gladly sacrificed the rather pointless Zelda Notes app integration for a free upgrade instead. What do you think? Is Nintendo justified in charging for these improvements? Or should visual enhancements always be free for existing owners? Gameplay excellence. Where Tears of the Kingdom truly shines. Breath of the Wild revolutionized the entire franchise by creating the first genuinely open-world version of Hyrule, a living landscape that brought together iconic locations from throughout Zelda's complex timeline and reimagined them on an unprecedented scale. This sequel makes no apologies for reusing that overworld foundation, though it's been thoughtfully remixed and updated, and it feels every bit as vibrant and alive as before. Dynamic weather systems force you to consider your clothing choices strategically. Merchants from various species traverse the roads between settlements. Villages buzz with the series' trademark eccentric characters living their daily routines. Monster armies patrol the highways, and majestic dragons drift gracefully across the heavens. Simply scaling the highest visible peak and taking in the panoramic view below creates a spine-tingling experience. The cel-shaded art style blurs beautifully in the distance, creating the magical illusion that you're actually interacting with a living watercolor masterpiece. Link's physics and movement mechanics return unchanged from his predecessor, which is absolutely the right decision. The character strikes the perfect balance between feeling substantial and weighty, while remaining responsive and nimble. You can still sprint, climb, glide, backflip, and sidestep your way across mountains and into combat encounters with precision and grace. But here's where things get revolutionary. Link receives a completely new arsenal of abilities thanks to acquiring a mysterious replacement arm after his original is severed in battle, fundamentally changing how you interact with the environment around you. Ultra Hand allows you to grab virtually any object and fuse them together. Fallen trees transform into bridges and ladders with ease. Recall sends objects backward along their previous movement paths, while Ascend launches you upward through any ceiling to emerge on top, which proves invaluable in the brand new cave networks scattered throughout the land. Finally, Fuse enables you to combine materials with your standard equipment, boosting attack power or adding elemental effects that work brilliantly with the game's outstanding physics engine. Want to electrocute an entire squad of moblins? Simply drench them with a splash fruit. Attach a shock fruit to a precisely aimed arrow and zap. But the most entertaining additions are undoubtedly the Zonai devices, electronic gadgets left behind by an ancient civilization, each with unique functions and capabilities. With the same simplicity as playing with Lego blocks, you can use Ultra Hand to combine these into incredible contraptions. Hover bikes, fighter aircraft, massive spinning tanks that launch missiles. The only limitation is your inner engineer's creativity and ingenuity. And yes, you can torture Koroks if you're into that sort of thing. But seriously, why would you want to? Mastering these devices becomes essential for conquering the brand new shrines, mini-dungeons that dot the landscape, just like in Breath of the Wild, each featuring puzzles of varying cleverness and complexity. Though I must admit, it was somewhat disappointing to notice a slight decrease in the length and complexity of some puzzles compared to the previous entry. It's remarkable how Nintendo's design team ensures these new abilities never feel overpowered or game-breaking, but instead perfectly complement the open sandbox they've crafted. These mechanics are introduced and taught during the opening Great Sky Island sequence, a visually stunning airborne reimagining of Breath of the Wild's Great Plateau that serves as an expertly curated tutorial for the game's core systems. It never feels patronizing or handholdy, actively encouraging multiple exploration approaches. But speaking of those sky islands, and this is where the design philosophy starts showing cracks: vertical expansion, ambitious vision, mixed execution. Hyrule has gained two entirely new vertical dimensions that seemingly appeared from nowhere. The sky islands prominently featured on the box art, and beneath the surface, a dark subterranean realm called the Depths. The underground area runs parallel to the surface world and matches it in exact size, But here's where things get problematic. A massive part of the overworld's appeal lies in its stunning beauty and environmental diversity. Changing biomes, varied climates, and visual spectacle. In the depths, we're stuck with one monotonous aesthetic. Cave systems rendered in gray, black, and dark red, without any settlements or meaningful NPCs. You're left with repetitive enemy camps and the occasional abandoned mine. To make matters worse, it introduces two new gameplay mechanics that quickly become tedious. Gloom, an evil substance that permanently reduces your health until you return to the surface. And Bloom seeds, because the entire underground is shrouded in darkness, forcing you to constantly throw these seeds to illuminate tiny areas. For permanent lighting, initially, these mechanics present an interesting challenge, but after dozens of hours, they become genuinely annoying, to the point where I actively dreaded exploring this dimension. While rare armor pieces help mitigate these frustrations, ultimately, illuminating and exploring the depths becomes a tedious checklist exercise that only highlights how visually unappealing and empty it feels. There's a reason the Oblivion Realm sections in Elder Scrolls IV were kept concise with clear objectives. In stark contrast, the Sky Islands are absolutely gorgeous, decorated with autumn foliage and vegetation that sparkles in golden twilight sunshine. There's significantly less landmass to explore here, requiring creative thinking to travel between islands. Despite the smaller scale, there's considerable repetition. Identical island designs appear multiple times throughout the sky. These islands supposedly represent the homeland of the Zonai, an ancient extinct tribe from thousands of years ago. Yet there's surprisingly little evidence of their former presence beyond occasional temple ruins. No settlements, no cultural memories, no signs of life except for the odd construct robot. The island designs feel surreal, impossible, and abstract, complementing the shrines and puzzles found up here. It's extremely gamey, feeling less like exploring the remnants of a lost civilization and more like Link is trapped inside a giant pinball machine. The overworld succeeds because it combines multiple elements seamlessly. It's simultaneously massive, beautiful, game-like, diverse, dynamic, and organic. Meanwhile, these narrative disconnect, the story that sidelines the player. While exploring the tunnels beneath Hyrule Castle, Zelda and Link uncover the preserved remains of Demon King Ganondorf. He springs back to life, shatters the Master Sword, destroys Link's right arm, and unleashes pandemonium across Hyrule, launching the castle skyward in a catastrophic event called the Upheaval. Meanwhile, Zelda gets transported back in time to witness the founding of the Kingdom of Hyrule through a mysterious stone, apparently stranded there with no clear path home. In this ancient era, she encounters Rauru and Sonia, the king and queen of this nascent kingdom, and begins orchestrating an elaborate plan to assist Link thousands of years in the future. Essentially, it's a complete retread of Breath of the Wild structure. Journey to Hyrule's four corners, help different races solve their problems, mostly extreme weather situations, then return to the castle for the final confrontation to defeat evil and rescue Zelda. That's fine. The Zelda series has never shied away from reusing successful formulas. My frustration centers on Link's, meaning the player's, minimal involvement in truly significant events. Zelda's story unfolds through unlockable cutscenes where she explores unfamiliar territories, forms new friendships, helps establish a kingdom, witnesses Ganondorf's rise and eventual imprisonment, all while creating a bootstrap paradox that ensures the prologue events occur as destined. By comparison, we're assigned cleanup duty, experiencing payoff without any meaningful setup involvement. The narrative puzzle is 99% complete when we arrive. The player simply slots in the final tiny pieces. Nintendo deliberately chose less intrusive storytelling for these modern open-world Zelda games, leading to the misconception that Breath of the Wild's story took a backseat to gameplay. This isn't accurate. The gameplay was the storytelling mechanism. Playing as an amnesiac Link awakening a century after catastrophe, we explored this transformed version of Hyrule alongside him, forging new alliances and rebuilding old relationships. By directly witnessing how the land's people were affected by this disaster and helping resolve their struggles, we were healing both physical and psychological trauma from events 100 years prior. But in this sequel, the world setup already exists. We're literally and figuratively retreading familiar ground, chasing various clues about the missing princess. Even many returning characters barely acknowledge Link despite everything he accomplished in Breath of the Wild, offering some variation of, "Hello Link, where's Zelda?" before dumping another fetch quest on him. Here's my controversial question. Why aren't we playing as Zelda in the past timeline? Though, apparently, Nintendo heard this criticism and announced Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment to address it. This creates a fundamental lack of emotional resonance, which is devastating for a series arguably built on emotional connection. Sure, Ganondorf returns, but this version has zero prior relationship with this Link, and displays minimal personality beyond generic evil motivations. A far cry from the melancholy depth we experienced with Wind Waker's incarnation of the character. Even the side quests, typically fun highlights of these games, lack memorable moments, mostly reduced to mundane fetch errands. While quirky, flamboyant characters still populate the world, their stories rarely develop beyond cheerful. Emotionally heavy moments, like Link witnessing the Deku Tree's death or waving farewell to his grandmother while sailing away to save his sister, have always been this series' foundation, and they simply don't carry the same weight here. The verdict: when ambition exceeds execution. I genuinely love the Zelda franchise and desperately wanted to love this entry with every fiber of my being. If you're seeking an open-world sandbox featuring outstanding physics and innovative mechanics, this absolutely delivers what you're looking for. The graphics, controls, sound design, and musical score are undeniably spectacular. Despite my complaints, I still invested over 150 hours, even with an adult's demanding schedule constraining my gaming time. But I think I finally understand why I abandoned this game shortly after its original launch. It's a less cohesive experience than Breath of the Wild, amplifying not only that game's greatest strengths, but also exposing some of its most significant weaknesses. Perhaps open-world Zelda has reached its natural evolutionary peak. Will the next installment attempt to somehow surpass this scope? Or will it return to the traditional formula that I seem to be romanticizing through nostalgic longing? Only time will reveal the answer. But here's where it gets controversial. I'm starting to believe that Nintendo's obsession with making everything bigger and more complex might be hurting the very magic that made Zelda special in the first place. What do you think? Has the series lost something essential in its transition to open-world design? Or am I just being overly nostalgic for linear dungeons and focused storytelling? Should Nintendo keep pushing boundaries or return to their roots? Let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious whether other longtime fans share these concerns, or if I'm completely off base here.